Hey, yo, what up, though, ladies and gentlemen? Back at it again with Rap Relived with your boy Flanoy, where we discuss black music culture from a Gen Z perspective. Now, today we gonna be having my first ever album review on the Rap Relived TV channel. And the very first review is gonna be the Game's 11th studio album, Drillmatic, Heart vs. Mind. And the album was executively produced by Hit Boy. Now, we know if there's any sign that the album is gonna be at least good, is that it's executively produced by Hit Boy. But we don't gotta get into the Hit Boy effect. That could be a whole nother video on its own. We gonna jump straight into this album review and let's chop this up, break it down, and see what we got going on here. So, at first glance, when I open Spotify or I open Apple Music and I see the album, first thing I do, just like many of y'all, I scroll down to look at the track list. Obviously, this track list is long as hell. 31 tracks, 2 hours. Well, a little bit under, just shy of 2 hours, 31 tracks. In 2022, there is not a lot of rappers, a lot of artists, period, giving us these 31 song, 30 song, even 25 songs is pushing it nowadays. Most albums you're gonna see are gonna be just under 20, like into that 14 to 17, maybe 18 song range. 31 tracks, that's different. So I'm already a little scared when I see that. Only other artists I could think of off the top of my head who's giving us these really long, 30 track, 40 track, 50 track albums is Chris Brown. We know Chris Brown is a master at his craft. And if he drop you a 50 ball worth of songs, it's going to be, 35 to 40 of the songs are going to be at least good. You know what I'm saying? Really good, if not. But 2 hours, 31 tracks. Then I see it's a lot of features on the album. So I'm looking through the track list. I see a lot of features. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of artists who I know are extremely talented and extremely skilled having a lot of features on albums. For some reason, I don't know, maybe it's bad experiences in the past. I'm just not a huge fan of seeing the optic of seeing a whole bunch of features. But when I'm reading through the track list and I'm reading the feature names, I'm reading names that I personally really like. I'm reading Pusha T, 2 Chainz, NBA Youngboy, ASAP Rocky, Chris Brown, G Herbo, even Lil Wayne. So I'm seeing the features and I'm like, okay, it's a lot of features on here, but these features, if he could get them to mesh, I might really like this. You know what I'm saying? And then I see some interesting titles on here. The most glaring title to me was Chrome Slugs and Harmony, rather. Chrome Slugs and Harmony. So we know off bat, this song has to have something to do with Bone Thugs and Harmony, of course. Ruby's Rose, interesting title, play on Ruby Rose. Drake with the braids. I was kind of scared to even see what that was going to be. Drake with the braids interlude. And then the Black Slim Shady. You kind of understand what that song is going to be when you read the title. But then when it starts playing, it kind of takes a whole nother spin on the whole idea of Black Slim Shady, what you thought it was going to be. So going into it, I had mixed feelings, slight fear of a lot of features, but I see the features and I'm liking the name. So I'm like, okay, if this works, I'm gonna like this album just off the features alone. I think one of my favorite features that I saw through the track list as well was the track called Voodoo featuring BOA QG. Now, I love that one because, if you know anything, you know that video. Voodoo, put a hex on you, put a hex on you, 223s in the tech 2. Like, I don't know the lyrics, I probably got them wrong, but that video, I love that video. So I'm like, okay, if he's gonna feature that, I'm gonna like that song. But we gonna get into the actual review when I actually played the album and listened to it for the first time. So first listen, very passive listen. I woke up, I did a little bit of morning grooming, shaving my head, washing my face, brushing teeth, cleaning up a little bit, getting my day started. So that's why I listened to the album for the first time, just kind of letting it play in the background, not even really paying attention to the track list and what songs are coming on, just letting it flow on through, not skipping nothing, just letting it play. So first thing I noticed after my first listen of the album was the variety in the production. Not only was the production high quality, of course, we talking The Game, we talking Hit Boy, but it was the variety in it. We got trap vibes on here, we got drill vibes on here, storytelling, West Coast. The song Nikki Beach is like a little islander or Afro beats. I don't know what the technical term for it would be, but it's got that dancey, poppy, that kind of feel to it. You know what I'm saying? Which isn't even necessarily my sound, but I can appreciate it being there. My favorites personally on the album when it came to the production, especially off the first listen, were the beats that I would call your MC beats. When I say MC beats, I'm talking about these are beats that you're not gonna perform well on unless you're a real master at the craft of rapping, or these beats are just your style and that's the way that you rap, and that's just the beats that you prefer to lay your lyrics on. You know, examples of these kind of beats were Heart versus Mind, No Smoke at the Polo Lounge, No Man Falls. There was a couple others on there that I really liked that had that real just hip hop sound, not just rap, but it was a real hip hop sound where I knew Game was showcasing some lyricism, showcasing his talent and his abilities to really rap, even though I wasn't closely paying attention to what was going on lyrics wise on that first listen. We also had some notable tracks that really stuck out too. You know, when you hear the samples, you turn around to the speaker, or I'm got my headphones on, I'm looking up, I'm like, whoa, okay, I like this sample, and clear samples too. I think the most obvious sample on here is on Chrome Slugs and Harmony. Like I said, Bone Thug sample. It's the thuggish, rugged bones. You know, we all know that one. So, you know, you hear that, you cleaning up, you shaving your head, you doing something, you like, damn, okay, this is familiar. Let's see how he ride this. I'm enjoying this so far. So that's the first listen. Going through my second listen, of course, the second time around, I'm giving it a much more intentional listen, you know, because I heard it the first time. I enjoyed what I heard, especially production-wise. I'm like, all right, now I want to take a closer look at what's actually going on. Let's kind of break down these elements of the album and see what we got going on lyrics-wise, features-wise, how are the features in the game meshing together on tracks, all that kind of jazz. So after the second listen, I grew this special type of appreciation for the album, right? And it's an appreciation that I don't have for a lot of albums. I don't experience this feeling with a lot of tapes, right? What I got from this album, whether it was right or wrong, was that the Game actually had a lot of fun making this album. And what I mean by that is it doesn't feel like he had a point to prove. It doesn't feel like he was trying to go for a really strict theme with this. It doesn't feel like he was trying to make 31 cohesive tracks. It sounded like he really just got some beats he liked. He got features from artists that he knew he would have some chemistry with. For some of these features, he even stepped into their world of their rapping abilities and their rapping styles, and he kind of stepped out of his comfort zone a little bit, at least, you know, from my understanding. And he just rapped about whatever he wanted to rap about on each track. You know, it didn't feel like there was a strict criteria he was trying to meet with this album. Now, I can't say that for every single track individually. You know, some of these tracks, you could tell he was really trying to pack the punch. But as an entire project, it didn't seem to just be a point to prove or a theme he was trying to follow with it. He was just going in, having fun, making the music that he really wanted to make. You know, this album really felt like I'm not trying to prove a point. I'm just making music that my creative heart tells me to make. If I was to put it into words, that's what this album sounded like. And it made me think about the album in a much different light. You know, as a creative myself, of course, I ain't no rapper. If I could rap, I'd probably be rapping. But as a creative, when I can recognize almost pure creativity, you know, when there's not a lot of restrictions in one's creativity, they just making the art that they want to make, it's very hard for me to be critical of it. You know, just it's like I could like or dislike some things, but it's hard for me for when I recognize an artist is making the art that they really just want to make, what their heart is telling them to go in the booth and create. I'm hesitant to be like, oh, this was good or this was bad. This was a good performance of this. This was a poor performance at that. I'm going to just say, I like this. I didn't like this. So with this album, it wasn't a lot that I could say I didn't like about it. You know what I'm saying? Because of that. So off the third listen of the album, that's where we get a little bit more detail with certain songs when I actually sat down, cracked open Rap Genius, and I wanted to read some of these lyrics, really pay attention to what the feature verses were saying, essentially just getting the most detailed observation that I could get with this album within the few days that I had to review it, being that it just dropped, you know, like 4 days ago. So what I noticed through this album was that there was a very common theme of self-reflection. Now, we know the Game is 42 years old. He been rapping for damn near 2 decades now, actually, if not 2 decades, maybe even a bit over. But he been in the rap game for a long time, almost my entire life. So we know the Game has a lot to talk about and a lot of stories to tell. With that, my favorite example of this whole storytelling, talking about life thing the Game was doing on this album was Start From Scratch 2. Now, this song, Start From Scratch 2, is basically a direct sequel of his track, Start From Scratch, that was on his classic album, The Documentary, which is my favorite Game album, and is actually a hip-hop classic. You know, the Documentary, he had a track, Start From Scratch. This is Start From Scratch 2. You know, this is almost 20 years later. And the song, in terms of the beat and the way he raps on it, is basically paying homage to Mobb Deep. Mobb Deep has a song called Get Away. And with this song, Start From Scratch 2, the game is pretty much just interpolating that track. And on this song, the game explicitly talks about and gives these examples of moments in his life where he would like to go back and do things differently, hence the title, Start From Scratch. He talks about how if he could go back, he wouldn't have had to shoot out with 50 Cent outside of Hot 97 after he left G Unit. Talking about if he wasn't hard-headed when he was younger, he probably assigned to Rockefeller under Jay-Z. A plethora of other things in this song that he really just reflects on and says, if I could go back, I would do this differently. If I could go back, I would have did this instead of doing that, or I just wouldn't have done this altogether. Things like that, things that we can truly appreciate from older artists who've lived a lot of life, have a lot of experiences, especially in the rap game, and they can come back and tell us the things that they wish they had or hadn't done. And in addition to Start From Scratch 2, there's a few other tracks on here where the game really raps from that reflective perspective, just rehashing his past and talking about what he's doing in life now, how he plans to improve in his life moving forward. Examples of this are, Father's Prayer, Universal Love, How Far I'll Come, and a couple other songs on here. So getting into my personal highlights on the tape. My first highlight came a little bit early on, and it was OPP with NBA Youngboy. Now, as of today, that song has been removed off the album. I don't know why. Maybe the news will come out later. It was a sample clearance issue or something to do with NBA Youngboy's team or the game's team, but who knows? I'm sick about it, but that song was the first highlight of this album. Now, this is one of my favorite songs on the album, of course, and it felt really good to see an OG in the rap game, a seasoned veteran like the Game, who's been rapping for almost my entire life. I'm 22 years old, and he teams up with arguably the biggest superstar of my generation in the rap game. Whether you like NBA Youngboy or not, that's the king of YouTube, king of streams. That man is it. He's the superstar when we talking about rap in this generation. And on this record, bro, just keeping it 100, Youngboy outperformed the Game like tenfold on this record. It wasn't even comparable. Like, Youngboy was in here. It felt like an everyday thing for Youngboy. But you could tell the Game a little bit out of his element, but you could tell he was having fun with it, executing. Now, don't get me wrong, the Game on here was not bad. It wasn't a poor verse. He actually performed really well, especially for being the type of rapper who he is. This is Youngboy's world he stepped into. So you can only expect Youngboy to outshine the Game at his own game. You feel me? No pun intended right there. But I could really appreciate the Game just being willing to step into the new generation's arena and execute and perform really well. You know what I'm saying? He's competing with a superstar, the superstar, in his own game, and he did pretty well. Now, the second highlight for me on this album was a 5-song string around the second third of the album. We talking about tracks 11 through 15. Those tracks in order are Heart vs. Mind, No Smoke at the Polo Lounge featuring Jeremiah, No Man Falls featuring Pusha T and 2 Chainz, Chrome Slugs and Harmony featuring Lil Wayne and G Herbo, and then lastly Start From Scratch 2. Now, during these 5 songs, the reason that this was a highlight for me in the whole album, probably the peak for me at this album, was because with the exception of Chrome Slugs and Harmony, the beats on these songs are very thin. They have the sound of like actual instrumentation, and it's even kind of a soulful sound, for lack of better words. And like I said earlier, these are those MC beats that I was talking about, where if you not a master at rapping, or these beats are just not your preferred style, you might as well not even hop on these tracks unless you're just trying to improve your craft. But these beats are for real MCs, and you had real MCs on these beats. Hence why you had Pusha T and 2 Chainz on No Man Falls, another one of the songs on here that's one of my favorite. For the most part, this beat has no drums on it until maybe like the last third of the track. And I grew an affinity for these no drums added beats from being a big Griselda fan. Not to compare artists and whatnot, but Griselda, a lot of their tracks are those no drum added beats where it's just a sample loop, mostly a soulful sample loop, and they just rap on it and they tear it to shreds. This reminded me of that. 2 Chainz, Pusha T, The Game, they all had their own style on this track. They all performed like how you expect seasoned veterans to perform on a track like this. They killed it. Like, you kind of turn that track on and you just sit back and you smile and you really appreciate hip hop for what it really is. Like, that was real rapping right there. Even though I don't like to use that term, that was real rapping. Third highlight for me, very personal, of course, but Money Cash Clothes with A$AP Rocky. Now, the reason this was a highlight for me is because All the way back 10 years ago in 2012, the ASAP mob as a whole is what really got me immersed into rap and hip hop culture. And so whenever I see an ASAP feature on an album, I have high hopes and high expectations because they're the ones who really just have a special place in my heart when it comes to my love for hip hop, you know. And they're not the ones, it's multiple other groups, other artists, but I could remember being 12 years old and hearing Laura's Never Worry and being like, this is some crazy shit I'm listening to right now. So I see that ASAP Rocky feature and I'm like, all right, bet. I'm expecting him to perform, and he performed. Like, I was not disappointed by this feature at all. I actually love this song. I love this feature. Now, funny enough, when the song first came on, I wasn't feeling it. You know, the first beat, it wasn't my taste. It sounded kind of, I don't want to say cheap because that's insulting, but it sounded just, I don't know, kind of basic, real basic boom bappy at first. That beat only played for maybe a minute, and then the beat switches. And when the beat switches, I hear, I can't even make the sound accurately, but my eyes got open real wide because I recognized that sound from somewhere. And when I heard that, I'm like, oh shit, this is the beat from Jay-Z and DMX's track. They had a track back on Hard Knock Life on the Jay-Z album called Money Cash Hoes. This is that beat, just like a updated 2022 version. So I'm like, all right, now I know they gotta tear this beat to shreds, because if they don't, that's just damn near disrespectful. But not to my surprise, Rocky and Game, they did their thing on this. You know what I'm saying? Basically interpolated that Jay and DMX album, Rest in Peace to X, did it in a very respectable fashion. You know, I expect nothing less from these two, and they did the job. You know, this was another example of Game really stepping into another rapper's world when it came to the feature. You know, because in the Game's second verse, in typical ASAP Rocky fashion, the Game went on this spree of just name dropping all these designer brands. You know, we talking Balenciaga, Rick Owens, Prada, Chrome Hearts, Goyard, Averex. Shout out to Dapper Dan. He's like, all right, I gotta step into Rocky's world a little bit. Let's talk about these designer brands. Let's talk about these expensive clothes, expensive pieces. I love this track, for lack of better word. But like I said, I'm biased because when I see that ASAP feature, I'm excited. Especially when they perform well, that just holds a special place in my heart for my love for rap music and hip hop. Fourth highlight on this album for me was the Black Slim Shady. Now, this track is 10 minutes long, a 10-minute long track on a 2-hour long album. So you're approaching listeners fatigue kind of sort of at this point, but I like this track. And I like this track because it's clearly a parody of Eminem. You know, it's clearly a parody of Eminem's, one of his signature styles of rapping, you know, where he takes on that alter ego, that Slim Shady ego, and he raps us through these dark, sexual, and violent thoughts and actions that this character is experiencing in his life, in his day. And it was particularly a parody of, you could say, Stan or My Name Is. You know what I'm saying? Those are the most glaring examples of what Game was thinking about when he was trying to make this track to do a parody of Eminem. You know, and I thought that the Game did a really good job with the parody. You know, from the length of the track, you know, it's a really long track, 10 minutes. The idea of having multiple characters on the record, the idea of having multiple characters on the track, the flow, the use of the humor, the dark humor. And he did an especially good job at tackling one of the main criticisms you'll hear about Eminem from people who, you know, they don't really like Eminem. He's not their taste. One of those main criticisms is that Eminem just rhymes random words for the sake of making them rhyme. You know, there's no cohesive thought to it. It's not like a bar, it's just rhyming words so that words can rhyme. And my favorite example of Game doing this on this Black Slim Shady track was when he said, "My intellect is NFTs and crypto. I could never be a crypto." It was Eminem. It was Eminemish. It was Eminemish, kind of, sort of. You know, if you're trying to do a parody, make a joke out of Eminem, that's what you would do. Not saying that Eminem raps like that, but it's a good example if you was trying to make fun of Eminem. Now, the last song on the album is the last highlight of the album, of course. Universal Love. We got Chris Brown, Chloe Bailey, and Cassie on this joint. And also damn near a Janet Jackson feature as well, as they use a sample loop from her song Got It Till It's Gone all the way through the song, just looping and looping and looping. I love this song. I love Cassie singing. I love Chloe singing. I love Chris Brown's performance on, like, the, I guess you call it a post-chorus. You know, he was singing those lyrics from SWV's right here. You know, SSWW, you the V. And I like the subject matter. I think the game did a good job at tackling a cheesy subject without doing it in a cheesy way. We talking about that whole save the world, save our people, feed the homeless. Not that the subject matter is cheesy, but oftentimes when it's mentioned and talked about, it can be done in a cheesy way. And I think Game did it in a decent fashion. It didn't sound cringy. I wasn't going like, oh, this nigga talking about this again. I liked it. I enjoyed the record. And so I thought the vibe of this track was just a really great way to close out a 2-hour-long Game album. Now, regarding the lowlights, for me, on here, the only song that I would skip on here is Nikki Beach. Like I said earlier, that Nikki Beach record, French Montana, Tory Lanez features, I think the record is good. Don't get me wrong. I think the record is good. I think it's bouncy. You could dance to it. It's a fun track, but it's not my taste. That sound, like I said, I don't know what to call it. I don't know if it's West Indies or like Afro beats, just like that more ethnic sound that's not straight hip hop, not straight rap, not necessarily my cup of tea, right? But I do think the track serves its purpose, and I think if that's a person's sound, that they'll like this record or at least appreciate the attempt at making a record like this. Only low light on here that I really didn't like, that made me uncomfortable, was the Drake with the braids interlude. That interlude came on and I got uncomfortable. I started cringing. I wanted to skip it real bad, but I was like, I gotta let this play through. Now I understand what they were trying to do with the interlude, kind of trying to shine light on how, these rappers, especially these superstar artists, they aren't just artists. They have lives, they have business to take care of. So, Game wanted a Drake feature, and Drake is giving like a voice memo or a voicemail saying, why he couldn't get the feature in. But it sounded like Drake was recording the interlude like with the phone above his face, laying on his back in the bed, and he just woke up. Like something I never want to experience a day in my life, getting a voice memo from a dude still in the bed after he just woke up from a nap or some shit. And it felt fake as hell. It sounded fake. It sounded extremely scripted. It didn't sound natural either. So that just added on to the cringe factor. But if my biggest complaint on a 31 track album is one of the interludes, I'm happy with that. So in closing this review, I would give this album an A-. And I give this album an A- because I think it does a great job at what I believe the intention was. And like I said, I think that intention was for Game to have fun making a record. He's reached a certain level of success where he doesn't have to prove points. He doesn't have to try to put together all these different types of things for albums to prove that he can put together cohesive projects and prove his lyricism. He's an established OG in the game. He's a seasoned veteran, so he could sit back and say, okay, I just want to make the music that I want to make now at this point. And to me, that's what it felt like. This track has 31 tracks on it. This record has 31 tracks on it. Of the 31, it's a good, I want to say half that I really enjoyed, and like 7 to 10 that are added to my liked songs on Spotify. So I think that's a really good success rate or field goal percentage. If you want to relate it to sports, that's a really good field goal percentage for an album that's so long with so many tracks on it, with so many features. The features worked really well on the album. I think Game did a really good job at meshing with the features. It didn't feel like any feature went to waste. That's one of the reasons why I don't like having so many features on these albums. A lot of times the features feel wasted. On this album, I didn't feel one feature go to waste, except maybe that French Montana feature on Nikki Beach. But like I said, that track was not my cup of tea, so maybe someone who liked it could give a better take on that French Montana feature. All these other features, I loved them. If I didn't love them, I at least liked them. So that's a wrap up of my first album review, Drillmatic, Heart vs. Mind by The Game, 11th studio album. We've heard some talk that maybe this is the last one. It probably isn't, but I like this album. I hope you enjoyed it. It's long. I hope you got your time's worth listening to this album, almost 2 hours. So that's the wrap up. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Peace.